Welcome everyone. I'm really delighted to welcome Geetanjali Shree to give the colloquium talk, the last colloquium talk of the semester. We might have one more depending on the speaker's availability. Geetanjali Shree is a very distinguished novelist in Hindi and a short story writer. She has published 5 novels. The 5th one is just out, called Re Samadhi. She's also written an intellectual biography of Premchand in English called Between Two Worlds. This was part of her dissertation work that she did in the history department in Baroda. Geetanjali's talk today is titled My Language, the How and Why of Hindi. Geetanjali, come.
Hello everyone. I have to start by thanking Chandan in particular for thinking of me for this series, and to Azim Premji University for making it possible for me to come here. So everybody here who has made that possible, I'm really, really grateful. It's my first visit to Bangalore. I've traveled a fair bit, but strangely, I've never been to Bangalore before. And it's something I had been waiting for, and I'm happy it's happened. And as I say to Chandan, the gate has opened, and I hope it'll continue to receive me. You already know how I have titled my talk. I write in Hindi. I'm a fiction writer who writes in Hindi, which often throws up very strange questions. One being, why do I write in Hindi? And it always amazes me that that question is asked of me. You know, Hindi is my mother tongue. It should be most natural for people to assume that I would write in my mother tongue. But it's somehow seen as odd, and I think that's where the story should begin. What I've done is write out a little talk. It's fairly informal, not academic. And I've written it out because it allows me not to ramble too much. You know, a novelist loves to ramble, so I have to keep a check on myself. So it's for my own convenience that I've done it. And I'm going to read out this first bit, and then I hope there'll be an interaction between us. A lot of you will probably know these things, but I think it's sometimes important to put things we know or have taken for granted in one place. And I think it gives it a certain sort of spotlight, which just refreshes important questions in our head. So it's a personal story. It's my own trajectory, you know, as a writer and my choice of language, Hindi. But I speak of it with the confidence that this is not my individual story. It's a story certainly of my generation, of many, many people of my background. And I think a lot of you who belong to the next generation and the next will find, you know, things that echo for you as well out there. So let me start with my little piece. An Indian, urban and educated, and a writer, and it is straight away assumed it must be someone who is writing in English. That is the story I want to tell. On learning that I write in Hindi, eyes pop out in wonderment. In Hindi, the subtext in that response ranges from how foolish and meaningless to how brave and exotic. This is the story of my moment, my generation. Imagine the irony of it, that to write in your mother tongue and not in a foreign language comes to be seen as amazing. It makes me think back about my history and my geography. Why did I land into Hindi when I could very well, apparently, have written in English? Which is the more lucrative, more hyped, more powerful language. Not a burst of patriotism, no, nor a penchant for the weak and the oppressed, that is Hindi versus English. I know that other languages feel more oppressed with Hindi, but that's the story of several language hierarchies. We can talk about it. No kind of martyrdom or victimhood, no. I go back to my beginnings. We were born at a time when the British had already left the country for a decade and more, but we inherited the value system and the hierarchy in it that had got formed in that earlier time, forming from the 19th century in a big, big way. It was then that two contradictory trends began. One, of elevating and institutionalizing English as the higher and educated language above all Indian languages, and two, not surprisingly, the desire to preserve, protect, recreate in pride and politics India's own languages. The origin of modern Hindi, my mother tongue which I'm talking about, is there. It emerged from the amalgam of several languages and dialects such as Persian, Sanskrit, Arabic, Braj, Awadhi, Bhojpuri, Maithil, and so on. This in itself was nothing unusual. India had long been a pluralistic, multilingual culture and society, despite the umpteen divisions it nurtured as well. There were mythologies and a whole cultural imagination, sometimes simply or even simplistically called religious, that was shared and spread across the sprawling South Asian subcontinent, qualifying it to be one in some other sense, though, not in the sense of a modern political entity of a nation state. To be seen, for instance, in music, pilgrimage, bhakti, and so on. So, pluralistic India, impure, hybrid, polyphonic. But, and that is what I would like to stress, what began in the 19th century was the emergence of another kind of pluralism, another kind of hierarchy, another kind of multilingualism, marked by a much sharper hierarchy than ever before between one language and knowledge system and the others. And we are still reeling under its effects. Reeling is about right, for I dare say it was like losing one's breath. We lost our breath. What was happening was not the more gradual and more organic shifting from one to the other, one language towards another, growing from one towards another in interaction, more and more and more, as maybe is happening with many European languages vis-a-vis English today, though that has its own problems and has thrown up similar issues, but that's another story. It was more dire, and the relationship to any language, one's own and the foreign one, became skewed, upturned, unnatural. And with this, memory too became skewed, upturned, and unnatural. Memory, an important repository within language. That is why I say we lost our breath. We lost all languages. English was the superior language which the elite and the supporters of the Raj accepted, imitated, emulated. Hindi and others became the language of national protest, of revivalist rhetoric claiming innate superiority over all. Hindi became the language of remembering and therefore of forgetting. Because in this hodgepodge of which is my language, which yours, which worthy of pride, which slavish, etc., so many things that come simply and naturally with language, the cultural repositories and lineages of knowledge got tossed in the air, and much got, at least consciously, forgotten. Hindi writers got engrossed, sometimes quite pompously and self-importantly, in the process of constructing a modern language and literature, which would be as or even more worthy than the one foisted upon them by the rulers. The whole gamut of nationalist challenge, the notion of progress, and the terms of the search but had the Western shape quite heavily in it. Still, for these writers, the task was to find one's voice and build a free society. Literature in their scheme became geared to the purpose of social progress, and to this day is overly concerned with highlighting evils and even recommending solutions. In a country like India, where there is anyway a veritable circus playing out all the time, it is never easy to keep society out. But making it the express purpose of one's endeavor only compounds its oppression. In the early 20th century, the most prominent Hindi writer Premchand coined a phrase for this kind of literature, Adarshonmukhi Yatharthvad, which is social realism to realize an ideal, and declared that that is what literature had to be all about. One of the most powerful literary movements of the century, the progressive writers' movement carried this forward in a big way. My generation landed to these pulls and pressures, gasping for breath, if you will. The British were gone, English was well ensconced. Many of us, of middle-class families, were sent to English medium schools to get educated. However, we were less deracinated from our culture than later generations, I dare say. The metropolis in India was still in its infancy, and globalization and the hard impact culture it could flood in still far away. The town had enough of the rural still in it, and the local and traditional still made up much of our cultural life. So, if in school we learned English and all other subjects through the English medium, in the home and the town, we still heard, spoke, lived in the Hindi language. In school, we were taught, ironically again, elementary Hindi. There was only one class of Hindi, and if we spoke Hindi at any other time, we were to be fined. All of us, as children, proudly stated Hindi was terrible. We find it hard to learn. And we even smiled and said, we have failed the Hindi test. The reverse was true about English. We showed off our knowledge of it. We were ashamed if we were poor in it. And almost all of us have known embarrassment about our one or both parents not being well versed in English. So, school, another world, English, another value system, another status, high. These were missionary schools and English medium public schools, simply called convents. Talk English, think English, play English. Hindi only so that we know what the language of the ordinary masses is and can converse enough to get by for basic nitty-gritty of daily routines. Hindi here, indeed, was a minority language, a dying language, an illiterate language. And even in that time of peak nationalism and independent nation, given in these centers of good education, just this small token respect. Contrary to this, the respect for English was not token, but mostly merely snooty. We learnt conversation in a silly conventy accent, and often we learnt only bad grammar, but were pleased to hear non-English foreigners of Europe and the Americans, of course, exclaim in admiration at our skills. We learnt inefficient and insufficient literature in either tongue, but for long remained pleased that we knew names of places in London and England, even if we had never been there. Conversely, we remained uncaring that we knew not names of places in our own homeland or even the little town we were in. That is how many of us have grown up, in two languages, with an objectionable colonial hierarchy operational in according them their place. It is a matter of more serious debate what English we learnt and how enriching it was or was not, and equally, what Hindi we did not learn and how impoverishing that was. Unsystematic, uneven, skewed in both, imbibing and or resisting the value system innate in both. But there were some saving graces outside school. The language in the house and in the street and informally was Hindi. Picture this: small and not so small North Indian town where I grew up. All the exchange with the so-called servants, the cook, the peon, the sweeper, the gardener, and more, is in Hindi. So also with other service attendants who landed up now and again: the tailor, the barber, the priest, the milkman, the newspaper boy. The latter brought us Hindi magazines, and we picked up some of our literary lore from there, which we also picked up from bedtime stories and stories at festivals and prayers that the elders told us. This was within the compound of the house. Outside stretched the town. Streets full of shops and their keepers, fruit and vegetable vendors, rickshaw, tanga, ikka pullers. Sounds floated in across the boundary: shouts, conversation, songs, abuses, all in Hindi, and the streams of languages pouring into it. Step out to their midst, and we were surrounded by the choicest colloquial Hindi, resonant and varied, the music and the cadence of it tuning our being, giving us wings. Then, the cultural and religious events in town: theater, festivals, poetry recitals, classical music concerts, all exposed us to Hindi in its varying shades. Indeed, each town had its prized writers and poets who wrote in Hindi, Urdu, or Hindustani. And so, the whole range of the language, from local colloquial in the bazaar to the classical lyrics of a higher order, tuned our ears to its cadence. Add to that my mother, who only knew Hindi. My publisher today jokes often that Hindi is literally my mother tongue. That is how many of us grew up, formally into English and informally into Hindi. It apparently prepared us for either choice, Hindi or English, in our later vocation. But in fact, as we went on, the divide between the two languages, at least in obvious terms, widened. And by the time we were in college for higher education, we were already reading, conversing, living, studying in English more than ever before. For most of us who had reached that far and could think of careers ahead, English was becoming the more natural choice. I too slid on from an MA in history to a PhD in history and then a teaching job at the university. It looked fine, the way to go, decent and secure in terms of status and economics. Where did my dissatisfaction stem from? I'm not really sure, but I remember that I tried to go for a degree in Hindi literature, but my application was not accepted because I had no background in the subject. This was in JNU. Worse, I had done elementary Hindi in school. This well-known Hindi writer has done elementary Hindi. But for my thesis, I chose a Hindi writer to work on, in English, for a theme within that of the history of Indian nationalism. This must have been my bridge from English and academics to Hindi and literature. Why did I reject the two obvious choices which had better prospects? Reject it for a more uncertain future, academics and English for Hindi and literature. There is no need to go into details about why I left academics except to venture some guesses. It did not inspire me enough. It did not stir up courage in me to go on voyages without fearing what shall waylay me or what the destination might be. In fact, its certitudes limited me. Its need for closures and conclusions hampered my freedom. Most of all, the protocol of academics was different. The referentials lay outside, and the test of the text, too, lay outside. In literature, even if willy-nilly, the outside was there, but the protocol did not lie outside the work. The truth lay within the created text, whether or not it matched up with some truth outside. It somehow brought me closer to truth to leave it open-ended, incomplete, free. Literature, in the power it reposes in the unsaid and left out, seemed truer to me. But no more on that. Back to Hindi and my choice of it. Why Hindi when English was already mine? And back to repeating that actually neither were mine. Whichever I chose, I shall need to learn, relearn, retrieve it. Sometimes I think Hindi chose me. The experiences I wanted to relay, the flavors and the textures of the intimate everyday were linked more to Hindi than to the schooled English I had acquired. Even more, this everyday was part of a memory I had twisted, if not entirely lost. And this went back farther than English and back into forgotten recesses of Hindi and where it came from. Hindi was my memory, and writing in it became a process of pulling out from the forgotten and the buried. Its varied shades and tonalities could come to me in Hindi and not in English. English, on the other hand, was more one-dimensional in the time and space of my memory world and my experiential world. It allowed me to become part of a visible, audible group, all in peaceful agreement, away from all the variety and stories I needed to retrace my connection to. And so I fell to Hindi and Hindi to me. But wait, patience for another minute or two, please. I had no conventional Hindi education. My head was a mix of Hindi and English, and here I was writing literature in Hindi. Let me venture to say that precisely this unconventional and lopsided education in the two languages and their literature freed at least some of us somewhat from a conventional burden of training and gave us the chance to learn anew in adventurous, unconventional ways, either or both these languages. A new route to the root, if you will. Relearning, rediscovering, reconstructing the language we chose. It is almost by accident that one of us chose Hindi and the other English. Almost by accident, I say, because it probably isn't really so. The osmosis of the world we live in, the politics and economics of language and protest, the appeal of the sound of Hindi I heard, over and above the outer sophistication of the English I was taught, all must, in some seemingly inexplicable way, have had me chosen by Hindi. Perhaps the look of it, the tonality or the tonalities of it, the sex appeal of it attracted me like English did not. That's the mechanism and dynamic of romance. Perhaps Its loss made it the homeland I needed to retrieve. Perhaps its unavailability attracted me. Its otherness fascinated me. And most of all, perhaps it jogged memory with a capital M, and or memories in me that made it a voyage of constant discovery and rediscovery. At an experiential level, its apparent otherness made the adrenaline shoot up in me. The other can be evil, dangerous, but this other was magic, uncharted territory, beautiful. So, what happened? I learned on the job, making the language as I went along. Sometimes we joke that that is how anything gets learned in corrupt India, on the job. The license comes first, the training later. A position of the doctor and driver first, and surgeries and driving are learned later. Killing a few first sometimes, and becoming experts by and by. Hopefully, I killed no one, except some purists might argue the language. Let me recount a meeting with a senior writer, Shani. I don't know who of you have heard of him. In the early years of my writing career, it was an informal evening, and he said to me, criticizing my work and my language, that you cannot couple any word with any word. In a tone of marriages are made in heaven, and some words belong together and some don't, he said about my way of coining words which came from different roots, sometimes from Sanskrit and Persian. He was referring to my eclectic mix of words from Arabic Persian origin to words from Sanskrit origin. To give just one example, I think I had written Shadid Abhas. Shadid is an Urdu word which means intense, and Abhas is a Sanskritized Hindi word which means feeling, ehsas. So he said, you have to say Shadid ehsas, you can't say Shadid Abhas. And he was picking out, niggling with language of that kind, that I was writing. They have different personalities, he said, no doubt giving them a different religion as well. I was young, enthusiastic, a bit pesky perhaps. There may have been wine, even if not French. And I noticed the veteran writer's clothes, an Indian hand-woven kurta over Western jeans. That, I said, is my moment, my personality. And I'll play along to learn if I fail, to invent if I don't. That is where my language is coming from. That is precisely what is happening with Hindi today, not only in my case, but in the case of many others who are expressing themselves in that language. This and the newer generation of Hindi writers are writing in an invented language which takes into its broad sweep their local and regional lineages, but also the larger varieties of babble they are exposed to with the breakdown of borders in a new way. Eclectic, hybrid, vibrant, free, in flow, and ferment. Today, I use both English and Hindi. The first for me is a comfortable disguise or costume. It dresses me well, and I go along confident and humorous, but with no stakes in it. Hindi it is, which is the real challenge for me, the real love. It strips me, and I'm raw and vulnerable, facing in the surging of half-forgotten memories those multitudes of peoples and stories and times who I had a link with and which are now tenuous or broken, and can't I rebuild them? From breathlessness, you might say, to schizophrenia. That is my final point now. That is how writers like me seem to be positioned today. On one side of us a whole people who belong to Hindi and are ours, but are looking over our heads and past our heads in a longing to leave us, looking towards English, which lies on the other side of my kind. That side, a more hegemonic and powerful English, fed by a fast-growing, globalized, single-centered, centralizing, homogeneous world, rains on us all the rhetoric of pluralism and multilingualism, but increasingly it is incapable of anything but monolingualism. Till such times, Hindi and we who have fallen to it thrive. Thank you. Yeah, if you want. There is time? Okay. Well, some of you, I realize, know Hindi. So I had said if there's time, I will just do a few minutes of reading from my latest book. Just so you hear the sound of it. I mean, with every language, there comes a different cadence, as you know, different stresses, a different kind of flavor, and a different kind of sensuousness. And of course, it is not easy to translate that into another language, which is why for some things I feel clearly happier to be doing it in Hindi. So I thought I'll just share one little bit with you, less than 5 minutes, I hope. And you have just a sense of the way I make my language. This is, there's no need for you to know the story. I cannot tell you the story. But it's in a bureaucrat's home, in a civil officer's home. And it's the so-called servants who are involved in this. And they are, you will notice, I'm only going to read out to you one sentence, which is about 2.5 pages long. Okay? So you will just hear the sound of it and perhaps understand something of it. Okay. Sorry, I should have put something on that page, but I'll get it. Here it is. Okay. So it doesn't really matter, you know, where it fits in the story. You just have to hear the way language has been constructed, and you have to just judge or enjoy the expression, a way of telling a story. लीलावती के माथे पर चिंता की लकीरें खिंच आईं जब उसने ये सुना। वही लीलावती जो कंठेराम की बीवी थी और सुशीला की सास और हीरो की अम्मा, जिसका असली नाम चंपक था और जिसे बड़े ने ड्राइवरी करवा के सरकारी नौकरी दिलवा दी थी, मगर जिसे सर्किट हाउस से निकाल दिया गया क्योंकि उसने एमएलए बाबू मिजाजी लाल जी की गाड़ी नशे के असर में चलाई थी। हालांकि इतनी सूझ उसे रही थी कि सुगंधित सुपारी वाला पान अपने मुंह में दबा ले, दारुई महक दबाने पर बार बार गाड़ी का दरवाज़ा खोलकर सुगंधित तमाकू का लाल रस बाहर थूकता जाता, जिसमें मिली सस्ती देशी शराब की बू बाबू मिजाजी लाल जी की बेटी को आ गई। चूँकि वो ड्राइवर की सीट के ठीक पीछे बैठी थी और सामने का दरवाज़ा खुलता तो नशे का झोंका उसकी तरफ झपकता, और संभव है कुछ बूंदें भी जो वो खुशकिस्मत थी या बदकिस्मत कि अंधेरे में देख नहीं पाई। और सबसे खुशकिस्मत खुद बाबू मिजाजी लाल जी, जो इक्के वाले थे तब मिजाजी रहे, एमएलए होकर बाबू और जी हो गए। और क्या कड़ाकेदार सफ़ेद खादी में सोते जागते कि पीक का वहम भी उसे मैलिया दे, और विधायक हों तो ज़रा सी भी छींटा कशी नाम डुबो सकती थी। मगर सूंघने को कौन अंधेरा पर्दा पार रख पाता, तो बेटी की नाक ने चंपक की कश्ती डुबाई। चूँकि उसकी शिकायत सुनी गई और ड्राइवर को निकाल बाहर किया, और तब से उसका नामकरण बड़े ने कर डाला कि हीरो है, और जब भी कंठेराम या लीलावती उनसे मिन्नत करते कि बड़े भैया जी कहीं लगा दीजिए, तो बड़े को याद दिलाना पड़ता कि देखो मैंने लगवाया था, इसलिए जेल की हवा से बच गया बच्चू, वरना उसने तो कोई कसर नहीं छोड़ी थी। और अब मैं कहाँ उसकी सिफारिश करूं, जो फिर भी उन्होंने की और करते, जिससे फिर से वो कहीं लगे। और किसी दूसरे शहर में बिल्डिंग कॉन्ट्रैक्टर के यहाँ मजूरी का मौका मिला भी कि आ जाए, तो उन्होंने हिदायत दी कि काम सीख लेगा तो खुद भी कॉन्ट्रैक्टर बन जाएगा, जिसमें तुम सोच नहीं सकते कितना पैसा है। लेकिन हमारा घर रिटायरमेंट के बाद और सिर्फ बाबा का घर तुम्हें फ्री में बनाना होगा। और सब हंसे। और फुस्से का उदाहरण देखो, वो बोले, जो किसी हाउसिंग सोसाइटी में महज प्लम्बर था, बाथरूम बनाना उसका काम, कि टाइल लगवा दो और नल शावर बदल दो, फिर ऐसा एक्सपर्ट हो गया कि टॉयलेट सीट और वॉश बेसिन से शुरू करके खिड़कियों, फर्श, दीवारों, वो इटालियन मोज़ेक और डबल ग्लेज और स्लाइडिंग स्क्रीन और शावर यूनिट करते करते मॉड्यूलर किचन विचन बनाने लगा। और फिर पूरे घर के ठेके उसे मिलने लगे। और देखो कैसे रौब दाब से स्कूटर से उतरता है और लंबी चौड़ी मजदूर पलटन पर हुक्म चलाता है, जो फाटक पर उसके इंतज़ार में बीड़ी फूंकती रहती है कि आज यहाँ का ठेका मिला है, फुस्से बॉस को आ जाने दो। और देखो फुस्से जैसे नाम के साथ के बावजूद वो बॉस हो गया है, तुम तो हीरो बॉस हो गए। पर वहाँ भी हीरो ने जैसे तैसे 3 महीने काटे, फिर ट्रक ड्राइवर बन गया और उसके बाद टैक्सी चालक, जिसके बाद लंबे अरसे तक उसकी कोई खबर नहीं आई। पर एक दिन हवा का रौला उठा जिसने उसे वापस ला पटका उसके माँ बाप के पास, एकदम भंगार हुए गुर्दे के साथ, जिसकी दवा दारू बड़े ने कराई ज़बरदस्त डांट के साथ। और रातों रात कंठेराम और लीलावती छुट्टी लेकर उसे गांव भगा ले गए, जहाँ से वे छुट्टी की अवधि पूरी करके खासे अरसे पश्चात लौटे, पर हीरो के साथ उसकी नई नवेली दुल्हन सुशीला को लाए। और लड़का संभल गया, लगने लगा। हालांकि उड़ती रही कि कभी कभी अभी भी अपनी सी पर उतर आता है। और कम से कम एक रात याद आती है जब सुशीला ने दरवाज़ा खोलने से इनकार कर दिया और हीरो बाहर झौराते हुए बेसुरे गले से गाने लगा, गुलाबी आँखें जो मैंने देखी, शराबी ये दिल हो गया। जिस पर सुशीला ने ज़ोर से दरवाज़ा खोला और ऐसा लपट्टा रसीद किया कि रात में देर तक वही गूंजता रहा। पर गाना थम गया और बड़े के खर्राटे भी, क्योंकि वो जग गए। मगर तब तक सिर्फ हवा थी जिसमें वो बोले, शोर मत करो, सब तरफ बड़े अफसर रहते हैं। और अब हीरो अफसरों के घरों में पर्दे टांगता है, छल्ले वाले भी और फैशनेबल चिक और ब्लाइंड्स भी। और एक बेटा एक बेटी हैं, गुड़िया और प्रिंस, जो जब जी चाहे स्कूल से लौटने पे या खेल से आके रसोई की खिड़की पर खटखटाते हैं कि ए अम्मा बर्फ़ का पानी दे दो या कुछ खाने को। और कभी उन्हें अंदर आने दिया जाता है कि अच्छा अपनी माँ का हाथ बटा दो, बर्तन हटा दो, पोंछ दो या क्यारी से धनिया तोड़ लाओ, पर पौधा नोचना नहीं। पर कभी नहीं आने दिया जाता। तब वे आँख बचा के घुस आते हैं और कोई देख ही ले तो पीट करे पाए जाते हैं, जिस पर बड़े की पत्नी बहुत कड़क सुनाती हैं कि सीधे होकर नमस्ते करो और मुंह में क्या भरे हो, छिपाते क्यों हो, कुछ चाहिए तो पूछ के नहीं ले सकते। जिस पर जाहिर है वो नहीं सर कुछ नहीं है मुंह में सर, मेम साहब को कहते हैं। और घूमते घूमते एक गटक में बोलने निगलने के उपक्रम में खांसने लगते हैं। और इस पर भी पड़ती है कि माँ को देखना चाहिए बच्चों की आदतें तो नहीं बिगड़ रही, ना कि उन्हें बुरी संगत लगने दें। और देर तक भिन भिन चलती है। पर उस दिन ये सब कुछ नहीं हुआ। बस प्रिंस की दादी, जो बूढ़ी थी पर उतनी नहीं जितनी अंदर बिस्तर वाली दादी, ने माथे पर बल देकर गंभीर सी आवाज़ में कहा, वो दादी कल्पतरु। जिस पर पोता प्रिंस सुशीला से कुछ कहने के बहाने से घर में घुसा और न बाएं देखे न दाएं, कि वो न देखे तो वो न दिखे। पर उसे कोई रोकने वाला नहीं मिला और वो बेधड़क बूढ़ी माताजी के कमरे में चला गया और धीमे धीमे उनके सिराहने कि फिर से वे दोहरा दें जो सुना है उन्होंने कहा, वो हैं वहाँ लेटे हुए छड़ी खड़ी पकड़ के सुबह सुबह। वे चुप रहीं। थैंक यू।
Question.
Time for the question. I can't stop speaking. Please ask long questions so that I have a break.
You gave an example of Shadid Abhas. So we speak a language which takes elements from a Persian, Arabic, etc., and we don't make distinctions between Sanskrit and Persian, but still in our homes we don't see Shadid Abhas. So some words, not because we have been trained, so my grandmother who's not trained in any school, she won't
say.
So I think, some words sound perhaps, now I'm not saying necessarily, but now you might still use it. And in that case, people would ask in my village, are you using it to emphasize something which we would not have noticed if you had used the usual thing that we speak in our homes? So there might be purist objection to what you did, but then there would be a different way of looking at it as well, I guess.
See, I think first of all, probably you will agree that there's nothing rigid about any language. It is constantly changing. I mean, the borders are fluid, and it is constantly reinventing itself and using expressions which it might not have been doing earlier. So Shani's objection, for instance, I mean, today the way Amir Khusru, for instance, wrote, I'm sorry, I don't have an example, but even putting in bridge in the middle of very, very so-called Urdu poetry, today will sound very odd. Nobody will do that today. I mean, the purists certainly won't. So I think it's also something which we have to recognize is a fluid, moving, language is a fluid and moving entity. Now, what Shani was saying, I don't think he's communal and so on and so forth. But I think there is an acceptance of something which the politics of Hindi and Urdu had already done, where they had started, putting some words in that camp and some words in this. While you are right that normally nobody would say Shadid Abhas. Now you are asking me, would I use a would I sort of couple those words for a certain sort of odd effect? I think a writer might do that. I know, for instance, Krishmal Dev Vaid, who's a very well-known Hindi writer, he deliberately sometimes translates from English. And some of it sounds quite odd. He knows he's doing it. Like I remember in one, he said, Langda Bahana, a lame excuse. And nobody who's a native Hindi speaker says Langda Bahana. But I think he's making an ironical assertion there. And taking a risk, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. After some time, it may actually even begin to sound quite accepted. So that's one possibility. The other, to create a certain effect, why not? I mean, a writer and an artist is always interested. I mean, it is a performance. It is a peshkash. And the writer would be interested in how it is going to sound. And it's always very exciting to bring to attention by a certain kind of displacement something which people have not, make people notice it. So a straight, boring gait will not be noticed, but literature will often follow a slightly, lopsided tone, and it'll begin to be noticed. So that possibility is there. But I'm also pointing out another possibility which applies to a lot of people of my generation. We who have not had conventional training like your grandmother in that language, we who have grown up in this very skewed bilingualism, where English is also some strange language that we are learning, it's not in a conventional way. And Hindi is also in some very skewed way. A lot of us have no other recourse except to make the language. So Shani, who's well versed in Urdu, would, for him, it'll have to be Shadid Ehsas. But for someone like me, Shadid Ehsas may be as alien as Shadid Abhas. So I'm actually picking from everywhere. I'm borrowing from everywhere, learning vocabulary everywhere, and making my own gut jod and sort of coinage. And some of it, I think, will get accepted in the language, and will just take the language forward, and some of it will sound odd, and even I will have to drop it. But it has to be an ongoing process which takes place.
Even though doctor is from English and G, but they will not, because for them, doctor has to be pronounced in English.
Yeah.
To make a social impact on that
Yeah.
person is from a particular.
Right.
So the way purists work is the way purists might,
Yeah, sure.
Operates is not straightforward.
Sure. And I think that should alert us to the politics behind a lot of these choices. So, I mean, it's your choice. I mean, you want to say Dr. G, say it, but you want to object to Shadid Abhas and not to Dr. G, then at least know what possible politics it's implying. At least we should try and be alert to all this. Yes?
That this thing that I am sitting on, उसको हम कुर्सी बोलते हैं, इसको चतुष्पाद पीठ मत बनाइए please. And Gandhi has said this in his speech to Hindi writers in Indore in 1930s. So in 1930s, the camps were making our linguistic vocabulary communalized, and the project of communalization has done a lot of harm to Hindi Urdu, which was a house that was shared and cohabitated, and hence I would say, while I agree with you that Gujarati may translate hospital as ispital for my grandmother's generation, or by my mother's generation and my generation, probably hospital is something that has naturalized now, and ispital is forgotten. And we have totally given away the word, as like we have given away our 5 paise ka sikka or 10 paise ka sikka. The word mijbani, no Gujarati college going student would use that word, which is a native word in Gujarati language. They would say picnic. If they are writing short story today, they will say picnic. And how would purists respond to this? Will they take up Bhagavad Go Mandal, which is some 32-volume dictionary in Gujarati, and say Mijbani is there, why are you not writing Mijbani? Probably picnic purist will also accept. So as she was saying, the language is fluid, and certain coinages work. As Gandhi was pointing out in 1934, Chatushpad Pit definitely doesn't work. But people who wanted it to work had a certain very divisive agenda in their mind.
Yeah, I think we must also realize that today, when borders have become fluid in the way, in a completely new way, on a completely new scale, and I mean, that's one thing that's happening. The other is that with a certain kind of literacy, I'm sure it's happening in this part of the world as well, the number of new voices, the number of new communities and peoples who are becoming literate and expressing themselves and bringing into some larger language all their words, or I mean within quotes, the dialects and all the local sort of expressions, and they're constantly changing the language, and the language is picking up usages which are not conventionally there. So, Hindi will have a lot more Gujarati in it today. It certainly has English in a very, very uncreative way, which is a problem, but there'll certainly be a lot more of borrowing and enriching of languages from each other today, I think. I mean, I think there's also a very uncreative process that's going on, where the attitude towards language has become very casual. It's become very, language is not seen, I mean, I think it's a combination of factors, so, in today's world where speed is so important, where everything has to be done very quickly, efficiency, no time for rubbish, no time for, what did that poet say, you know, what is this life full of care, you have no time to stand and stare. I don't think that's the maxim for today's youth. They don't have that time. So in such a time, I think the importance of expression, of unfurling bit by bit and carrying on and on, you know, and enjoying that is so much less, you know, because people don't have the time. Even the arts, they want to kind of race past and enjoy it. So I think in this time there's something casual and careless also happening with language. But with the opening up of borders, the way words from each other and from so many streams are flowing into some common stream is much, much more than before.
Hello, ma'am. So we are talking about Hindi, so I'll ask my question in Hindi only. मैम बहुत अच्छी तरीके से आपने बताया कि कैसे कॉन्वेंट स्कूल में जब हिंदी बोलने पे फ़ाइन लगा किया जाता है, तो वो उस दौर में हम लोगों के साथ भी ऐसा हुआ है कि हिंदी बोल देने पे क्लास के बाहर मुर्गा बनना पड़ता था और खड़ा रहना पड़ता था. तो आज के वक्त में या मैम जो ये चीज़ें चली आ रही हैं कि एक इंग्लिश हिंदी के बजाय इंग्लिश का डोमिनेंट होना हमारी लैंग्वेज पे, और ये सिर्फ
थोड़ा सा अलग रखिए, गूंज आ रही है ज़्यादा.
हेलो.
हाँ, नहीं अब तो सुनाई नहीं पड़ा, चलिए बोलिए.
तो मतलब हिंदी को इस तरीके से रखा गया है, हिंदी या नहीं, ये किसी भी लैंग्वेज का सवाल है मैम. जैसे किसी भी भाषाओं के साथ एक जो एक तरफा जाति की जाती है, उस तरीके से आज के दौर में मैम इंग्लिश हमारी ज़रूरत हो गई. अगर हमारे पास इंग्लिश नहीं है तो हमें कहीं मार्केट में जॉब नहीं मिलेगा. ये एक सर्वाइवल की बात है और भाषाओं के बचाने की सवाल है. तो आप मैम भाषाओं को बचाने के सवाल को और खुद की ज़िंदगी को मतलब सर्वाइव कैसे करें, उस चीज़ को मैम आप कैसे देखती हैं? भाषाओं को बचाया जाए या खुद के अस्तित्व को बचाया जाए, किस तरीके से इसको देखती हैं?
यही एक बड़ा चैलेंज है. आप सही कह रहे हैं कि ये प्रॉब्लम है. अंग्रेज़ी की जो जगह हो गई है और जो ज़रूरत हो गई है, इसीलिए बहुत से लोग इसको समझ के भी अंग्रेज़ी के ही पीछे भागते हैं, क्योंकि उनकी रोज़ी रोटी, उनकी सिक्योरिटी सब उसी से बननी और बिगड़नी है. वो बात तो सही है, लेकिन कहीं पे हमको ये एहसास भी होना ज़रूरी है कि हम क्या खो रहे हैं अपनी भाषा खोकर. और ये जो है, देखिए, इट्स वेरी इम्पोर्टेंट दैट और वेरी स्ट्राइकिंग दैट वी हैव taken English and some other European languages away from the narrative of colonialism and imperialism, and we have put them in the narrative of progress and future. So easily we have forgotten that past. तो हमको कुछ तो ख्याल करना पड़ेगा कि हमने उसमें क्या खो दिया है. और आप ये सिर्फ मेरे ख्याल में, शायद मैं गलत नहीं कह रही हूँ, कि ये कुछ कॉलोनियल जो सोसाइटीज़ हैं उन्हीं का ये इतिहास है कि वो अपनी भाषा को एक तरह से भूलना चाहते हैं और काफ़ी हद तक ट्विस्टेड तरह से भूल भी चुके हैं. और जगह क्या हो रहा है, जैसे अंग्रेज़ी का इतना बोलबाला है, तो फ्रांस जो अपनी भाषा पे बहुत गर्व करता था, या जर्मन, इन सब को भी अंग्रेज़ी की ज़रूरत अब कहीं ज़्यादा महसूस हो रही है. पर इस तरह का अनइक्वल रिश्ता उनका नहीं है कि हमारी भाषा कुछ नहीं है. तो वो अपनी भाषा जानते हैं. आपको किस भाषा में अपने को आखिर में अपनी जॉब के लिए जाना है वो दूसरी चीज़ है. लर्न इंग्लिश ऑल्सो, पर आपको इसको छोड़ना या इसको हिकारत से देखने की जो ज़रूरत या हमारी आदत पड़ गई है, उससे तो हमको मुक्त होना पड़ेगा. उसके बारे में हमको सोचना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि हम इट्स लाइक थ्रोइंग द व्हाट्स द एक्सप्रेशन इन इंग्लिश, यू थ्रो द बेबी आउट विद द बाथ वाटर, कि इस भाषा की ज़रूरत नहीं है तो इसको भूल जाओ, हमें तो अंग्रेज़ी की ज़रूरत है आईटी के लिए और इसके लिए और उसके लिए, सब चीज़ के, अमेरिका जाने के लिए हमें तो अंग्रेज़ी की ज़रूरत है. पर आप क्या क्या आपने उस पानी के साथ फेंक दिया है. देयर सच रिपोजिटरीज ऑफ नॉलेज, you know, which today people are realizing, you know, that there's something which has been lost and there's an attempt to retrieve it in India and abroad. I don't know how long that struggle will take and how it will succeed. But you know, you don't have to throw out something so rich. आपको उसको जानकर एक अपना स्ट्रॉन्ग ग्राउंडिंग के साथ साथ आप जितनी और भाषाएं सीखना चाहते हैं सीखिए. और ऐसा तो नहीं है कि अगर आप अपनी भाषा सीखेंगे तो अंग्रेज़ी नहीं सीख सकते. ये तो गलत है ना, हम लोग के अंदर ही कैपेसिटी है बाइलिंगुअल होने की, मल्टीलिंगुअल होने की। आप अंग्रेज़ी भी सीखिए, मैं तो ख़ास पॉइंट आउट कर रही हूँ कि हम लोगों को हिकारत सिखाई गई है अपनी भाषा के प्रति। जो कॉन्वेंट का रवैया था, मतलब बहुत ही बेवकूफ़ एजुकेशन हम लोगों की रही है। कहने को अंग्रेज़ी बोलते हैं लेकिन ना अंग्रेज़ी सीखी है ना हिंदी सीखी है। तो ये बस ये चीज़ मैं कहना चाहती हूँ।
Ma'am, I have two questions. First is related to the conversation we just had. I feel that when we talk about languages, it's what the masses do, right? That whatever I speak right now will be the language which will continue for the time I'm there in this world. So don't you think that when languages mix, say for example English and Hindi, when I'm speaking Hindi right now, I know I will use some English words because my education has been in English throughout. So don't you think that it's like saving the languages and considering that these two should be rigid compartments is also a little problematic? And saying, and if we can go for a language which is a mix of both these languages, or which has influence of both the languages, which will show how our culture is right now or was before. So I don't know, like, how do you take that? That is A. And B, where do you see the origin of Hindi? Like when we talk about Karnataka, it has Kannada, and we know that Kannada's origin will be in Karnataka somewhere. There may be variations in Tulu and different Kannada also, but we know that it's from Karnataka. Do we see Hindi originating like that in some place of our country?
See, Hindi is Hindi as we recognize it today. Sorry, I'm answering the latter first, and then I'll try and remember what you asked earlier. Huh? But Hindi, what we call Hindi today, Khadi Boli, is actually only late 19th century onwards that it develops, into a recognizable language. And it is coming down from several streams which have a very, very long lineage. Sanskrit somewhere, but all the so-called dialects which were very, very rich, Braj, Bhojpuri, Maithil, etc., Maithili, etc. So it's coming down from that, and it's an amalgam of that, which became Hindi and Urdu, of course, Persian and Urdu. So that became the Hindi that we call Hindi today. So it's not like, it's not like a single stream that you have to, trace its lineage from. It's several streams that you trace the lineage from. That's Hindi. That is about the second question. What is the first one? Okay, what do you do about, sorry, just repeat the question.
I just wanted to know, like, why is the mixture of two languages or conservation of one language and overpowering of other languages seen only as a bad influence?
Yeah, no, mixture of two languages, at least I don't see it as a bad thing at all. I think it's important, it's necessary, it'll happen. Language does not, any language, if it must survive and it must become richer, has to have open borders and must borrow and must keep honing its expression further and further. So I don't see that at all as a problem, So you'll always find, that depending on where the language is, what it is exposed to, it will develop a new vocabulary. Or the same words which earlier denoted something else begin to have newer meanings in the context of, current sort of society and politics. For instance, Kattar, I don't think it always had a negative meaning. I don't know if I'm giving a correct example, but just it came to me just now. But Kattar is not always a negative meaning. Today, Kattar means a fanatic, But Kattar would have meant something positive like totally dedicated, okay? So meanings keep changing according to a context, political and social and whatever kind of context. So I don't think there's any problem in languages mixing. I don't think anybody who's sort of wanting purity as a rigid category. There's something to be said for knowing a language well, knowing where it comes from. Okay, this is the Persian origin of it and so on. But, it's like any skill or any art form that you must know it in its purity, not in order to just maintain the purity. On that strong base, then you can innovate and do other things. So you should not be, what is happening with language today is that you don't know the languages and you are you are breaking them, ruining them, destroying them. That is what is bad. But if you know a language well and then you are playing with it, that's important, that's creative, and that's important in all human endeavors. So I don't think that's the problem. The real problem is a seriously unequal relationship. So even politically, a language can be powerful. So French accepting that English at the moment is the powerful language. Once upon a time it was French. Even that one has to take along, in your stride. Okay, that's the way the world is operating just now. So that's not by itself the problem. The problem is when the relationship is so unequal and so stupid that, a rich language which has a longer lineage than many languages it is up against, begins to have a complex about itself, begins to see itself as illiterate. हमें सिर्फ हिंदी आती है, हमको अंग्रेजी नहीं आती है, So it is those attitudes and those inculcations which are the problem, not the mixing of languages or not the thing of, I think surely we should learn more languages. And I think this great problem between North and South India is also about this, I mean, there Hindi is the oppressor. But if the North learnt that they can also learn, suppose the policy was about learning one language from south of the Vindhyas plus your own mother tongue plus English. I don't think there's a problem. So there's here the mother tongue plus a language from the north and English. There's no problem. But it's the inequality which angers or dehumanizes relations. That's what I'm trying to say. My God, suddenly too many hands go up.
Maybe the questions that are not clear.
Listening to your talk and I'm seeing the pages that you have written, for the today's talk. We are very sure that, you could have really done well in English language as well. Did you ever feel like going back to English? Because English was primarily the language that, at home, at your home or something. Second, I remember a poem by Bhavani Prasad Misra where he talks about how should a writer be. So he writes that a people's writer should be like, जिस तरह हम बोलते हैं उस तरह तू लिख, तू हो हम में से ही कोई एक, फिर भी तू हमसे बड़ा दिख. Respect for a writer among people, So do you write for a specific audience, keeping in mind,
Okay. I seem to have an extremely short memory. First, you tell me what your first question was. I have to go one by one. What was the first question?
Did you ever feel like going back to writing?
No, this is the latter question. What was the first one? About?
That was the first one.
That.
You could have done.
Yeah. That strangely, that's a question which is too often asked of anybody who's writing and seems to be able to speak English. So I think fluency in conversation doesn't necessarily make you good and creative with the language. So that's something I certainly cannot be sure about, but I suspect. So for me, language carries with it a memory. And like I said, in my talk, I may consciously not remember many things, but somewhere that memory, even in its distortions, is there in me. So I feel that with Hindi, I would be, the chances of my getting a larger fund of memory which would enrich my expression, the chances of that are much greater with Hindi than with English. And what I learnt of my Hindi and English, like I pointed it out in my talk, I learnt Hindi at various registers. I didn't learn it in school, but the Hindi that I heard was at various registers, the most so-called vulgar to so-called classical. So I feel that somewhere my senses are more richly tuned to many layers of that language. While in English it may seem that I'm efficient enough. Efficiency is not going to make you creative. So I may be efficient enough. It may work if you need the language for engineering or computer science or something, but not necessarily in creativity. Of course, this is speculation. Because when you plunge into creativity, then you start somewhere and you keep inventing, reinventing, discovering. So something may have happened in English, which I cannot know unless I try. But what I do feel is that I made the choice intuitively, like I said. I mean, I don't know, Hindi chose me, I chose Hindi. The things I was writing felt, the atmosphere seemed to be conveyed so authentically in Hindi that I was writing in Hindi. And I moved into it intuitively. But today I'm very happy I made that choice. And I feel there's a challenge in it. It may not take me to the big market. It may not make me an Arundhati Roy. But somewhere the challenge of doing it in Hindi is so much greater that, like I said, for some strange reason, I feel stripped in Hindi. I feel here I'm exposed, and I don't want to fail in Hindi. So the challenge in that is so much richer and so much greater than if I were to write something reasonable in English and do very well in the market. That's not the kind of really creative fulfillment I think I want. Perhaps there will be other writers who will agree, and I think you also you don't have to become really moralistic about this. I mean, if there's an element of playfulness also in creativity. So as a joke, if I wanted, okay, let me see if I can write an English story and see what happens to it. I would like to leave myself free to do that. But seeing all the things that I see about the implications of English today and the implications of Hindi and what all Hindi might bring out in me, etc., 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 I prefer to stay with Hindi. And there was another question. What was that? Oh, okay. Who am I writing for? Yeah. Well, Bhavani Prasad Mishra, was that a quote of his? Okay. That is something which is said quite a lot, that you should be speaking in the language of the common masses and you should be writing for them. So I think that's a concern we had when so-called modern Hindi literature began. Perhaps it's the same in other language literatures as well. That there's this society which has been under British rule for so long, and now it's becoming free, and we have to work for the upliftment of society. So whatever you write has to be for the masses, and it has to be in the language of the masses, and so on. I think up to a point I would agree, but I don't think I would want to make that the hard and fast rule of literature, because I think literature has a much, much wider canvas. And I always say, don't get so obsessed with society. I always say it when I'm in a Hindi sort of talk or debate or something. I always say, don't make it such an obsession or a fixation or a rule that we have to write for society. Because society, especially in this country, society is everywhere. It's so invasive what's happening in society. Whether I try or not, society will creep into my work. I don't have to make it the express purpose of my work. So I just say that, literature and art has a very vast canvas, and one could be doing very different things in it. And like in any field, you can't sort of tell the doctor that, you must only be doing in India, most people are dying of simple sort of diarrhea. So you should only be, doing research and become a doctor to treat diarrhea. You don't say that. I mean, there may be doctors who will choose to do something very specialized. So there is something that you also do for that field. and you throw yourself into research and betterment of that field, which may or may not show an immediate utilitarian effect and benefit, but it's there. While something else, if you're working on diarrhea, will show an immediate, effect and impact of it. Yes, this is doing good here. So I think we have to have room for many different kinds of excelling in art and literature. Yeah.
Hi, ma'am. I could relate a lot of what you talked about the convent education and how English being dominant. And what you spoke of today is not just restricted to Hindi, but almost all the vernacular languages. And while I was in school, after my 7th standard, I jumped at the first opportunity to move away from Tamil to French. And recently, for the past year, I've been reading a little bit of Tamil poems and trying to be enrich myself with Tamil literature. And I just realized, and I was beating myself up saying, why didn't I continue with Tamil till I finished my 12th? And then I realized one of the things is, at least in my convent school and a few others that I know of, the language teachers, especially the vernacular language teachers, they're not all that great. I mean, they don't spike my interest in the language. In fact, they terrorize me that I want to get out of the language. Do you think if that could be improved, more people will be taking up their vernacular
stimulating
language?
Well, this is a vicious circle. This is a vicious circle because we don't give enough importance to some of these languages. We don't give enough resources to them. Then there are not enough resources, it becomes, the preserve of people who may not necessarily be the most stimulating and best. So that is unfortunate. We always say that the children's books written in Hindi are so boring that no child wants to read those books. They want to read these very interesting English stories, but then see the difference in it's a vicious circle. So everything becomes about how committed and dedicated I am to the cause. But you don't just do things for commitment. You also need other things. So it's a vicious circle, which I suppose only if we get together with our awareness, with our efforts together, we could possibly change things. But I must say something on the use of the word vernacular by you. See, this is another thing. We want to critique, we imbibe attitudes and language which we're actually critiquing, So vernacular, and I'm saying this to you because, I have some of my works, they're in Hindi, but surprisingly and in some ways very pleasurable. There are places in Europe where they're teaching Hindi. So I had the chance to go to some of these places, and I remember in Italy it happened. Italians are known for their hospitality. So they really, they welcomed me like I was the most special creature on earth. And with that warmth and welcome, they would introduce me as this fantastic writer from India, and imagine she writes in the local language. So I heard this a few times, the local language, or regional language also they said, I think, on occasion. And then I thought, without making it very offensive, how do I ask them? So I asked them in a very gentle and friendly way. I spoke publicly, and I said, I'm a little curious at the use of this word local language, that I write in the local language. I mean, is Italian a local language anywhere here? They said, no, Italian is our national language. I say, Hindi is my national language, it's a national language. So there are, how easily we accept some of those terms. People continue to say vernacular, and I think there's a problem with vernacular, and we have to think again of the politics of these terms. What are we, do we ever say English is a vernacular language? I don't know, tell me. I don't think we ever do. So it's an international language, And what makes it international? It's not the numbers, it's some other power it has. So I think we have to see what term we are using where. Bangla, Bangla is in India. It is one of the, I don't know, one of the languages, huh? I don't know, I wouldn't like to call it regional or vernacular. One of the national languages. And okay, but you can still say, without the pejorative politics, you could call it one of the regional languages. In Bangladesh, it is the national language. Or take literature, you know, I mean, there'll be Srilal Shukla, if any of you have read. Well, the Hindi walas definitely have, but it's very much set in North India. It's a fantastic novel by a very famous Hindi writer, Srilal Shukla, Rag Darbari. So it can be described as a local literature. But would Jude the Obscure of Hardy ever be described as local literature? Or Salman Rushdie, who has this very eclectic attitude, cosmopolitan sort of approach, would be called international writer. Would Nirmal Verma, with his universal man, you know, the deracination and loneliness of the modern man, would he ever be called an international writer? So I think these are, I'm just pointing out to you that there is a whole language we accept, and we have to become very alert to how there is a hegemony and a, you know, a certain kind of whatever it's called, I don't know all the academic terms, but you know, there's a centralization, you know, there's a stage which considers itself the center, and it tells everybody else what words to use, and we start using them even when we are critiquing them. So I just wanted to say that, you know, we have to be alert to these as well. Yeah.
One question. मैं हिंदी में कोशिश करूँगी पूछने की. तो मेरा सवाल उनके सवाल जैसे काफ़ी कुछ है. जब आप बात कर रही थी तो दो चीज़ें मेरे बचपन से मुझे याद आई. पहली थी कि मेरी मदर टंग हिंदी है, बट मैं बेंगलोर में पली बड़ी हूँ और मुझे इंग्लिश बहुत अच्छे से आती है. और I don't think it's a convent thing. Even CBSE mainstream education does this to you. It has a hierarchy of languages where English is your first language and Hindi or Sanskrit becomes your second language. तो उस समय कन्नड़ा मुझे सीखने का कोई भी दिलचस्पी नहीं थी, क्योंकि मुझे लगा मुझे ज़रूरी नहीं है. अगर मैं हिंदी और इंग्लिश से काम चलाऊँ और बैंगलोर एनीवे कॉस्मोपॉलिटन है तो मुझे क्या ज़रूरत है. मुझे अभी अफसोस होता है क्योंकि जब मैं बच्चों के साथ या दूसरे लोगों के साथ, लोकल्स के साथ काम करती हूँ, मेरी कन्नड़ा इतनी ख़राब है कि यूजुअली वो एक हंसी का स्रोत बन जाती है. बट मैं ये पूछना चाहती हूँ कि अगर कोई शिक्षक या कोई बड़ा ये चाहता है कि वो बच्चों के साथ या लर्निंग स्पेसेस में अगर वो लैंग्वेजेस की हायरार्की को ब्रेक करना चाहे तो वो कैसे कर सकता है. That's my question. And another incident which was there was कि यूपी में हमारा परिवार मिर्ज़ापुर, बनारस, इलाहाबाद से आता है, बट वहाँ पे भी एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग हायरार्की है कि तुम मैं आवत बा, मैं जावत बा ऐसे नहीं बोलोगे, तुम अच्छी वाली हिंदी बोलोगे. तो इस हिंदी में भी वो वो डिस्क्रिमिनेशन हल्का सा आ जाता है. तो ये जो चीज़ें हैं जब हम बच्चों के साथ हैं या बड़ों के साथ भी हैं, how do we step out from just thinking about it to doing something about it?
अब इसका कोई सीधा साधा सॉल्यूशन तो है नहीं कि मैं बोल दूँ ये करिए और हो जाएगा ठीक. बट आई थिंक आई मीन दिस इज़ अ ग्रोइंग कंसर्न in I think today in particular, you know, although the power paradigm is weighted against this, but I think there's a realization, there's a growing realization of what is happening. And if you speak of the world of language and literature, then there's, you know, what, for instance, what are they called? Multinational publishing houses, these international awards, you know, what they are doing with, what kind of politics gets promoted when they choose, how they choose certain literatures, and how much they leave out, you know, the ignorance. There's politics also, but there's ignorance also, you know. So there's a great concern about this which is being expressed. How is this to be set right? And what you're saying is, I mean, it's operating at a more sort of, more sort of Indian level, but this is, I'm saying it's a concern in the larger world as well. So what are we doing, this lopsided balance, that we are operating within? Now, first, I think the first thing is being concerned about it, because then you already start conducting yourself differently. You start wanting to learn the language which you lost. So I think these are all small signs that there is an attempt being made to set the balance right. But as far as, how, I can hardly tell you, and I think the state, I mean a concerned state, a concerned sort of universities, and it has to be a concerted effort, multi-pronged effort by many, many institutions and people who realize that there is this need to upturn the balance that is operating in the world. That's all I can say.
So, I think what we were discussing related to that, I'm a student of education, so I've been thinking that we all know that there's this apathy towards Hindi, or maybe this hierarchy, how it plays out. But you mentioned about these experiments, new literary experiments which
Sorry,
are
new?
Literary experiments which are happening in particular Hindi, when authors are bringing the local words, or maybe dialects, words from dialects, would anyway that anyway help change the situation in schools, maybe attract more students towards maybe this kind of literature, and then probably or is it a harm, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
You seem to be constantly connecting.
Sorry.
You seem to be constantly connecting political economic power with language dominance, etc. So I come from a district where we speak Kannauji, and this has been for a long time. Now, but as far as I know, all our people, no matter in which period you go, they always did literature in Braj or Avdi. Now, and this is despite that Braj and Avdi were not our political masters. I mean, our political masters were either ourselves or the Bundeli speakers or the Marwadi speakers. Now, we did not see this as an either or thing. We knew that for writing devotional literature, which is for Krishna Bhakti, it would be Braj, for Ram, it would be Avdi, and for daily prayers, it would be Sanskrit, and for our own conversation, it would be Kannauji. You would figure out that the author is a Kannauji speaker only when he, by mistake, somewhere he spells a word in the way he pronounces in his own, dialect. Now, and the way we pronounce words is so different from any nearby dialect that I'm not sure how we got that pronunciation. So, so the language dominance, of course, is not necessarily linked to political economic dominance, but more importantly, the fact that something is used only at home and something else is used in office does not necessarily, is not necessarily seen by people as a sign of language dominance. Because we use 4 or 5 actually in my grandfather's and my great grandfather's generation, most people were pentalingual. So I think we need to see we need to understand language dominance from a slightly
yeah. Well, I'll just respond to you first. You are actually talking of a time which I'm speaking of as a fairly positive time in India, where we were genuinely multilingual. We have had a long tradition of that multilingualism, and it has not created rifts, So that's a different time altogether. But today it is political economy, and it is imperialism, and it is the market and globalization, which today have a kind of dominance that is trying to throttle everything, even while it swears by multilingualism. So I think already whatever you say applies to, within quotes, a good period of multilingualism in India, pluralism, multilingualism. But what we are concerned about is this later period where there is a kind of power paradigm which is very, very difficult to dismantle. And sorry, I've lost it. Yeah, just quickly. Yeah, well, you know, of course, they are in a very organic way changing the ground reality. So when there are these new voices, you know, so-called Dalits, so-called tribals, women's languages, and, you know, different sort of regions that have come into literature, for instance, then there's already, from inside, there are dents being made in the established language or the established sort of, what's it called? Not icon, what's the other word? Anyway, the canon. So that's already taking place. It's being undercut. But what I think is necessary is something much stronger. And why is there such a rot in universities? Why is there such a rot coming down from the state, which is not able to support and change these things? I mean, those are very, very large questions which I think many others would answer better than me. But I think there also we have to, those are also places we have to focus on and, you know, see where it can bring about change. But at the ground reality level, yes, in an organic way, I think there are lots of things happening. That is why this concern has become such a large concern.
Thanks.
Thank you.